Hey everyone, I'm Cecil. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there with you today. This is actually one of two workshops I'm supposed to be helping with that I'm skipping out on this week because I'm over at the Early Career Symposium. But with talking with the team that you're working with today, with Heather and Rachel and Xiaowei, we decided that a great way for me to still be present and to still present and to still, lead part of today's discussion about design-based research would be to record this video. And so, without further ado, let's talk about the skills and dispositions that are needed for design-based research. Now, there are lots of skills and beliefs and attitudes that you're going to need as part of design-based research. And before we get into the skills, I want to talk about some of the beliefs and attitudes. And even before we get there, I want to talk about why there's such a wide range of beliefs and attitudes and skills that we are going to need as design-based researchers. And that really comes down to the fact that we're going to have to fulfill multiple roles. The first role that we will fill is that designer role. I mean, after all, this is design-based research. So we're going to have to work as designers to help figure out what are the designs that we are implementing and how are we going to iterate on those different designs. And oftentimes, part of that iteration, part of that planning for new designs means we also have to take on a consultation role. With this role, we're helping our stakeholders to decide what needs to go into designs. We're helping them figure out how to implement designs. We're really trying to, help build some capacity so that, when we leave the context that we're working in, whether it's an educational context or it's a corporate context or a government context, that the people we leave behind will be able to continue with the programs and the different tools and implementations that we've put in place. And then, of course, that last role is the role of the researcher. When we are going into design-based research, as we've already talked about today, we do have two goals. We have the practice-oriented goal, which has a lot to do with the design and consultation, but we also have that theory-oriented goal, which is the research. We're trying to build some understanding of a context and how we can improve that context through different designs and implementations and iterations of those implementations. And so because we have all of these different roles, there are some fundamental beliefs that we are going to have as design-based research. And the first one of these beliefs is just flexibility. DBR requires flexibility. The path that you start on as a design-based research as part of a project may not be the path that you maintain throughout the entire process, and that is okay. You might get in there and figure out that the needs you thought you were addressing were really not the needs that needed to be addressed in order to solve the problems. And so we have to be flexible as design-based researchers in order to know where the path needs to go. And because that path may change, we have to have this willingness to explore. The path could change, variables along the path, such as the time frame, or your goals may change. And so the design-based researcher really needs to be willing to explore and seek out answers to various problems of practice and other phenomena, not just the ones that you want to focus on. And part of that is to be collaborative. Design-based research does not happen within a bubble. The design-based researcher cannot assume that he or she has all the answers. In the case of DBR, truth is often what is agreed upon by collaboration. The design-based researcher needs to recognize his or her own strengths, biases, and weaknesses when putting together a team and be able to supplement those with partners who are going to have different weaknesses and different strengths and even different biases, because we have to understand that we're working in this context together. This isn't lab research. We aren't just looking at petri dishes under a microscope. We really do have to be collaborative with other humans because we're trying to solve a human problem, and humans are very complex. And part of this means that you're going to have to be agenda free. When you come into that design-based research project, you can't really bring your own research agenda into the project. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't bring your own research interests. That's great to have interests and to want to explore those interests, especially as how they might relate to the context and to the problem you're trying to solve, but you can't have an agenda. You have to seek to help your partners with their problems, and not the other way around. You can't really go into a design-based research project looking for partners who are going to help you answer your research questions. You're really going in to help solve their problems and solve their questions and answer their questions and build theory and practice along the way. And the last part, and this might in some cases be one of the most important attitudes to have about design-based research, you have to recognize that any environment that you're going into, whether it's an educational environment or, again, a corporate or government setting, that there is an ecology that's going to be disrupted by you being there and by these new implementations that you are putting into place. And so you really have to think about the entire context almost like a spider web. If you start to put pressure on one side of the web, it really stretches the other side, or if you shake one side, that's going to reverberate on the other end. And so you have to know, how is everything connected? How can I make sure that when I'm in here, I'm not disrupting the entire ecosystem, because we don't want that ecosystem to fall. We have to support that ecosystem while also making sure that the changes that we're making don't completely disrupt what's happening and cause that ecology of the environment to fail. So we have to understand that in the environment that we're working, there is a certain circle of life. All things in that environment are connected, and tweaking one element might cause stress or might relieve stress on another element, and we have to make sure we understand how those elements are connected. And this brings us to then the skills that we're going to have to use as part of design-based research. That first skill is one of just organization. We have to be able to track our design-based research decisions in much the same way that if we were doing some kind of case study where we were going in and we were doing lots of observations, we would have to have meticulous notes that we could really talk about the participants that we're observing. What are they thinking? What are they going through? What changes are we seeing within the ecosystem? We have to make those same kinds of observations within design-based research. And this can be done through using journals. We can blog them. You can make several white papers along the way, and these are all great things to do to track this, because in some cases, a design-based research can last multiple years. And so we want to make sure we can understand where we've been and where we're going, so that we don't repeat a lot of things. And part of this, this idea of tracking comes down to, how can we create clear, frequent, and informative reports for our stakeholders? These can, again, be white papers, but just something that we can use to update stakeholders, administrators, partners, etc. And because we have so many stakeholders who are involved in design-based research, we want to make sure that the design-based researcher can orchestrate moving parts. You might have teachers involved, you might have students involved, you might have administrators and parents and other researchers and research assistants, and we want to make sure that we can organize and orchestrate all of these parts so that they know their roles, they know, how they're participating, what they are bringing to the project, and so throughout everything, we can really make sure that the project is always moving forward. Because if just one group who is involved in DBR stalls out, again, it goes back to that ecology, right? It affects how each other group is able to progress and able to meet their goals. And so we really have to be able to orchestrate all these moving parts. And then we actually get into the research skills that are needed. And really, any research skill that you can think of is probably going to be important to design-based research. We talked about that flexibility, and you have to have flexibility even as a researcher in design-based research. Research that you might do might include something like a literature review to help you understand theory and the explanations of the local phenomena that you're looking at. How are you going to connect the granular to the general, and vice versa? You might need qualitative inquiry to develop key understandings of partners or organizational values and goals of the project. This can be really important, especially at the beginning of a design-based research project. You might need quantitative inquiry to explain if and to what degrees interventions and designs are working And you might even need evaluation to assist yourself in making judgment calls and to assist the team in making judgment calls between various needs, various values, various designs, various goals of various stakeholders. And so because, again, we're working within this complex ecology, the research approaches that we use also are complex and require flexibility. Based on different parts, different phases of the project, we're going to need to use different research. We have to be able to iterate on designs. We have to be able to know, what about this design worked, what didn't work, what can we change. We have to make sure that we, do we change a lot of things? Do we only change one element? How do we track the changes? How do we track the success of those changes? So we really have to make sure we understand how to iterate on the designs that we are implementing into our context. And lastly, we have to understand that we have a complex audience that we're working with because we have so many different stakeholders and so many different audiences. Even within the realms of practice and research, there are different audiences. So I want to talk a little bit more about these audiences and what they look like. And so you can see on this slide that we do have several different audiences, and there are even several different research audiences that you might publish for. And so your audience is going to change based on the goals of what you're doing. You're going to have white papers that are clear to understand and that focus on progress, timelines, costs, next steps, etc. for your stakeholders. Those reports to stakeholders are going to look very different than the publications that you're going to put out there. The publications that you're going to float out into the world are going to have to meet the requirements of various journals and their audiences. And so you're going to need to know what are these journals focused on? Are you publishing about the design that you implemented, in which case a design-based journal is going to want to focus more on the elements of that design and the design process? Are you focusing more on the theory that you developed and the theory that you used to help inform the design? A theoretical journal is going to be more interested in that. There are some journals that are going to want to meet in the middle. They're going to be interested in both the theory and the design and how those two pieces really came together. And then there are some journals that might just focus on practice. Maybe you want to share your designs and how they were used in practice and the different impacts that had in a more practitioner-oriented journal. And so again, the design-based researcher even has to be flexible in knowing, how do I report my findings? How do I report what I've been working on? How do I share this information with the community at large so that I can help them understand the theory and the designs that we've been able to produce? Part of the design-based research, as we've been talking about, is understanding partnerships and how you're going to be able to work with your partners. So the design-based researcher also has to have some pretty important interpersonal skills. The first of these just being social competence. Now, social competence is a really general umbrella term for things like, do you have appropriate social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral skills needed to successfully adapt to different social situations? Social competence also reflects having the ability to take another person's perspective concerning a situation, being able to learn from other people's past experiences, and being able to apply that learning to the changes that happen within social interactions. So there's a wide range of social skills that the design-based researcher is going to have to display. One of these that is I really want to stress that's even part of social competence is empathy. I add it specifically here just to stress that empathy can't just be a skill, but it has to be a conscious effort. You have to really think when you go into these situations that you are going to take a stance of empathy. You're going to be empathetic towards your partner's needs, to their desires, to their goals, to their context, and to their interest. And you can't just be, again, focused on your agenda. Open-mindedness is another one that's very closely related to this, but it also relates to the ability to be able to listen and understand the plights, thoughts, and needs of others. You have to be open to giving your partners a voice as part of the design-based research project. Even though you might be leading the project, you have to recognize that there are still other leaders who are part of that group and are part of that ecosystem. And you have to let them be part of the conversation, and you have to be willing to open your mind and maybe even your heart to their interests and desires. And then this last one might seem a little, I don't know, counterintuitive to the goals of design-based research. But sometimes design-based research can be very difficult for partners to understand. You are wanting to do several iterations. They might think you're using their students or employees or workers as guinea pigs. And so sometimes explaining the plight of DBR can be very difficult. And so what you want to make sure that you do is sometimes if your partners are having a hard time getting on board, it's best to just cut them loose and find partners who are willing to work with you. Knowing which hills you can fight and die upon is really important to making sure that the project progresses. You don't want to be fighting with your partners when you could be working with different partners to get things moving forward. So be flexible in who you partner with, and you might partner with some people in the beginning of a project and different people towards the middle and different people towards the end of the project. But we have to be flexible, and we might not be able to get the same stakeholders or the same partners to work with us for the long haul or for the entire project. And so how are we going to make sure that we have the partners we need for the phase of the research that we are in? So let's talk a little bit about those partner skills. Your partners are going to have similar skill sets to what you're going to have. You're going to want to have partners, first of all, who are willing to help you clarify roles and goals. So partners who can say, yes, I'm willing to do this, and by doing this, I'm going to help you achieve this goal. Or even partners who at the beginning of a project can help you understand what are the goals, what are the problems, what's leading to those problems. Do we need to address the problem itself? Are there different causes to the problem that we need to address? And so really think about the different partners who are going to help you understand the goals and the roles of the people involved. You need partners who are willing to commit to solving the problem. You can't just have partners who want to play with cool new designs. You need partners who are committed to helping you understand what's going on in the context so that they can help you inform the designs and the theories that you're working with. You want partners who are going to be motivated to keep the project moving. I talked a little bit about that with flexible partnerships. Some partners might want to get really bogged down in details, and that might not be what's best for the project. And so in those cases, how can you find the partners who are going to help you keep things moving? And then lastly, any of the other beliefs and attitudes and interpersonal skills that I've mentioned are going to be important for your partners as well. You want them to also be flexible. You want them to also be open-minded. You want them to also be empathetic, etc. Because the more that the partners are willing to be those things and do those things, the easier it's going to be for the whole project to benefit from teamwork. So I want to talk about all of these skills and these dispositions in the context of the DBR scenario that we've presented you with. So we've presented you with this scenario of, having ELL students and working with those students and parents and teachers to solve this specific problem. And so I'm going to turn things back over to Heather, Rachel, and Zhang so they can discuss some of these questions with you. I'm very thankful that I was able to join you today and to share this information with you. Hopefully, if you have questions, then Heather and Rachel and Zhang will be able to answer those for you. If you want to contact me for any reason, they will also share with you my contact information. So it's been great to be with you today, even though I'm not able to be with you here synchronously. Hopefully, I'll be able to see some of you in some of the different sessions that we have planned throughout the conference. Thank you so much for attending this workshop, and I hope that my part in today's presentation and today's goals has been helpful to you. Thanks.